I'm Adam Moz, and this is Moz Models. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about cross trims. Now, what are cross trims? Cross trims, very simply, are a way to deal with overload, particularly when you're maidening a new aircraft. And what they do is, when you're maidening it, and to be clear, I fly mode 2, so this is my elevator, my aileron, my rudder, and my throttle. When you're flying a new maiden, you are going to be concentrating largely on your aileron and elevator to keep the aircraft stable while you trim it out. Now, it's generally pretty easy to go over and click a trim when you're flying normally, but when you're actively working on an out-of-trim aircraft, for example on a maiden, reaching over and getting those trims can be difficult. Now, there's a few ways to deal with it. One of the classic ways is to get a buddy to basically reach over and hit the trims and give you 3 clicks of down trim as you fly the aircraft. But there's an easier way. What if you swapped these 2 trims and swapped these 2 trims? So this is an X20, which means it's got it's an X20 Pro, so it does have 6 trims, but it has the X20 locations for the rudder and the aileron trim, and T5 and T6 are outboard, as opposed to on an X18 where the rudder and aileron trims are in the outboard position and T5 and T6 are inboard. Just want to make that clear. If you're used to an X18, the trim layout is a little bit different. Every radio from FreeSky with 6 trimmers has a slightly different layout for the trimmers. That can be a little confusing at times, but once you get used to a radio, it becomes pretty obvious. In the case of the 20 Pro, these go up and down. Now, so cross trim, you swap these 2 and you swap these 2. Now when you're flying, and I'm actively flying there, I can give it a couple clicks of down and 2 clicks of left, and voila, I'm able to trim the airplane while my right hand is focused on flying the aircraft.
Trim center.
And I'll just
Trim center. Trim center.
I just got everything centered back up there. So, cross trims. Now that you can see the use of them, how do they work? So you go to the model and the trims menu, and you scroll all the way down, and there's a cross trim section. Now, this setup confuses a lot of folks until you think through it. Suffice it to say that on the left side is the actual trimmer. So you've got stick rudder, stick elevator, stick throttle, stick aileron, then T5 and T6. Now the first 4 of those, every one that labels stick, that pays attention to the mode of your radio. So if you're flying mode 1, stick rudder is going to be, actually mode 1 and mode 2, stick rudder is always T4. What changes is stick elevator and stick aileron, because those 2 controls cross over. This becomes your throttle, and this is your elevator. So this T2 would become your stick throttle, T3 your stick elevator in mode 1, versus T3 is stick throttle and T2 is stick elevator in mode 2. The reason for this is so that you can trade a model file between a mode 1 radio and a mode 2 radio, and the trim layout still makes sense. If you go cross trim, you still get cross trims. They're not hard-coded to the specific trimmer, T1 through T4, and also they don't require the radio to reinterpret the mapping. It just goes, hey, this radio set to mode 1, this is my trim layout. Each of these stick items maps to this trimmer in this mode. Simple as that. On the right-hand side, those are your trim functions. So those are the functions you're actually going to find either embedded in the mixer, or you can reference when you're selecting a source, trim rudder, trim T5. Those are the trim functions that are exposed to you in programming. So if I wanted to set up straight up cross trims, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go stick rudder becomes stick trim aileron. Trim elevator becomes trim throttle becomes trim elevator, and trim aileron becomes trim rudder. Now if we go back, and you'll notice I'm hitting the trim rudder here, but that's my aileron. And I'll just show it. Let's go to outputs. Well, this is an absolute default model, so you can see 2 aileron channels. And similarly, let's go for trim elevator, and you can see it here. And that's it. That is cross trims. As simple as that. Now you can do any remapping you like here. You can even have one trimmer assigned to multiple trim functions. You can't do multiple trim functions assigned to one trimmer, but you can do multiple trimmers to one trim function. Like I could go down here, and I've actually done this. On the X18, I find sometimes I get my aileron and my T6 mixed up. So what I do on that is I just go to T6, set that also to trim aileron, and now both of this is now trim aileron. And that's assuming, by the way, that I've got T1 as my trim aileron, which I do on my X18. So you can, and we'll just go back home, and you'll see there it goes. That's it. That's cross trim. Very, very simple, very, very useful. As long as you remember, going into trims, again, down here, left side is the trimmer, right side is the trim function. The trim function is what works in your mixers. The trimmer is, of course, your physical trimmers. That's it. That's all. Simple as that.